In this video I'm going to be comparing two 10-inch sliding compound miter saws. One is the Ryobi that you see here, and the other one is the Harbor Freight Chicago Electric that you see here. The Chicago Electric or Harbor Freight retails for about $119 before coupon. But one thing you need to remember is this does not come with a blade. I had to purchase and install the blade on this one. The Ryobi, on the other hand, does come with a 40-tooth blade installed, and it's $169 at the big box stores at the time of this taping. The first place I'm going to start out is there's a significant difference in size, so I'm going to lay my yardstick out and show you the difference in dimensions on these two, so you get an idea, because if you have a limited amount of space like I do, you have to be able to take that in consideration. So I'm going to compare the size of the base on both of these. Let's take a look at the width of the footprint of both of these saws. I've got my yardstick set up on the Harbor Freight, and from handle to handle it's just about 26 3/4, almost 27 inches wide from the edge of the handle to the other side. And if you look at the Ryobi, it's just shy of 31 inches. So the Ryobi will give you more stability when you're working on larger pieces by a couple of inches on both sides, but it does take up a larger footprint when you have to store it away. Another consideration is the mounting footprint, and for the Chicago Electric, from end to end where you might bolt it down or tie it into a portable table, is right at about 12 inches. When we come over to the Ryobi, it has a little bit deeper base, so that's 15 inches, about 3 more inches. So it does extend back a little bit further and will give you more front to back stability. Another dimension to keep in mind is front to back. In other words, what's the distance from the handle in front to the back with the saw pulled forward. On the Harbor Freight, it's just about 28 inches from front to back. On the Ryobi, this table's about 32 inches. This hangs over a little, or 31 inches. This is just about 31.5 to 32 inches front to back. So if that's an issue with storage, you need to keep that in mind. So it is a little bit wider, and it is a little bit deeper in terms of dimensions on the Ryobi. Another important dimension to keep in mind, especially for storage, is the height of the saw when the saw is locked down in place. So on the Harbor Freight, it comes out to just about 15 inches is where it falls in. So you're going to take up just about 15 inches in height. Let's go over to the Ryobi, and let's set this in place. So the Ryobi is just about an inch taller. So just a slight edge difference between the two in terms of their height when you've got the blade locked into place. Another consideration is how tall is the saw when the handle is all the way up, and as you can see here, it's just about 22 inches on the Harbor Freight. If we look at it on the Ryobi, it's just about 25 inches. And this may be a consideration if you're going to put either one of these saws into a cabinet where you have something overhead, and you certainly don't want to bump your fingers while you do that. So keep that dimension in mind if you have a cabinet space or something above where you're going to put this saw. Something else you want to keep in mind is the removability of these two extensions. On the Harbor Freight, this little yellow wing nut here, all you have to do is twist it and take it out, and then that extension comes out. However, on the Ryobi, if you want to keep these from sliding out, you have to put this in with a screw, which means you have to turn this on its back to put it in, take it on and off. So if you're going to be doing that a lot, you might want to find some kind of wing nut or something that makes that a little bit easier, because if that's not in there, that extension will come right out if you're trying to lift this saw up. Another thing that I do like about the Ryobi is the edge of this is much more parallel to this. It's probably a 32nd of an inch or 64th of an inch lower than the deck. However, on both sides of the Chicago Electric Harbor Freight, both these extensions are considerably lower. So as you're moving your workpiece across, it can sag a little bit. So depending on the type of work you're doing, that may be a consideration. So keep these things in mind when you're comparing these two saws. In terms of cutting range, both of these saws are about the same. They both will do a full 12-inch cut from front to back. And they will also, both of them will cut at least 3.5 inches. I believe the Ryobi says 3 5/8 inches, whereas the Harbor Freight says 3.5 inches in terms of your depth of cut. So if you're cutting some 4x4 and you're going to do a lot of it, you may find the Ryobi just a little bit better than that. I know when I had to cut some 4x4 on this one, if you look at my video on how to get the most out of your miter saw, you'll see what I had to do to make that work for 4x4. The miter mechanism on both of them are pretty much the same. They both have a small foot that you can control by turning it up and down. This one has a thumb lever on the top and then a twist knob to lock it in place. And then you do have the gauge right here. What you will find with the Ryobi is that the lever is on the bottom. You do also have the little foot that's adjustable. But one thing that's really nice about this is once you release the lock and you start moving it, it will slide until you get into one of these major increments on the miter gauge, which is really nice. So you don't have to guess. It will pop into place for you. That's a nice little addition to have. These saws come with a positive mechanism for controlling the depth of the cut. So on the Chicago Electric Harbor Freight, if that'll come into focus for you, this little guy right here controls the depth. And then you engage or disengage it by moving this lever in and out. I've used it. It works okay, but it's just not well engineered as far as I'm concerned. If we come over here to the Ryobi, this has the little thumb screw here, this little knob, and then there's a spring on the screw, and then it has a very positive mechanism that goes in and out to control the depth of the cut. Let me see if I can get that in focus for you. So both of them have control over the depth, but I must say that I like the one on the Ryobi better. Both of these saws are compound miter saws, so let's take a look at the ability to change the angle. On the Harbor Freight, you do see this right here. You see the gauge. It takes it all the way over to 45. It does have two set screws that allow you to adjust the stops on both sides. I found this a little bit sloshy, and I did have to adjust it right out of the box. And of course, that locks it in place. And while I'm here, this locks the shaft from front to back from making any moves. So if you're storing it or you're moving it around, you don't want the saw to slide back and forth on these rods. The Ryobi has the same thing. I must say for this adjustment, this mechanism is much more positive and is much easier to see because it's on the side as opposed to more centered on the Harbor Freight. It does have set screws here and then again on the bottom, and this is what locks it into place. And again, this one has the ability to control front to back from moving. Dust control is another major consideration. The Harbor Freight does have a dust port on the back. And if we get in close here on the blade, you can see it does have kind of some scooping going on, but not a whole heck of a lot. That's about all that it has, okay? But if we come over here to the Ryobi, you can see that cowling or that scoop right there. It appears to me that that's going to catch an awful lot more dust. And of course it has a dust port on the back. And another thing that I like about the Ryobi is it does have a piece of plastic in here that curves the dust back. So if you see how this is curved, as it comes in, it kind of blows it out to the side and channels it. So I think you're going to have better control with the Ryobi. This has very simple dust control on the Harbor Freight. The dust bag does work, but because it doesn't have that scoop that you see right there, it just doesn't capture the same amount of dust as the Ryobi. There is a significant difference in the clamps between these two saws. The one on the left is the one from the Harbor Freight, and you notice this little wing nut here controls up and down on this smooth shaft. So anytime you put it into place and start tightening down, you're going to use this to keep it from changing position vertically. Also, when you put it into the slot here on the Harbor Freight, you've got to use that wing nut to tighten it down. However, with the Ryobi, because, and I'll get in here close, see if you can see this, it's because it's black, it's hard to pick out. There's knurling all the way up and down. So when you set this into the holes that you see there and start to clamp down, the knurling keeps it into the hole without moving, and the knurling also keeps this shaft from sliding up and down when you tighten it down. The other thing I've noticed on this saw, it does come with 2 places to put into, actually a total of 3, so 2 on this side and 1 on the other side that you see there. Whereas with the Harbor Freight, there's just 1 on each side. So there is a difference, a significant difference in clamping between these 2. There is onboard storage for this Allen wrench. It's also a Phillips head screwdriver. I'll lay it down so we can get a better shot of it. Let's see if I can get that into focus for you. So that's onboard storage, and it's stored in that little slot right there on the Ryobi. So you can adjust any of the nuts that require Allen wrenches or anything that requires a Phillips head screw on this saw. You've got onboard storage for the tool that'll handle all that. I'm going to put the model numbers for both of these units in the description below. Looking at the Ryobi, it's $169. Does come with a blade. Does have a little bit better dust control. This one does have a laser. If we look at the Harbor Freight, it's $119 before coupons. You've got to pick up the blade. It does not have the laser, and dust control is not quite as good. The warranty on the Chicago Electric Harbor Freight, I believe, is 90 days. The warranty on the Ryobi is 3 years. I can't tell you how well either of these companies honor their warranties. You're just going to have to go online and look at the comments there to see how well they honor the warranties. If you're just going to be using a miter saw for do-it-yourself type of work, smaller hobbies, and you're going to do it within the first 90 days of the life of that saw, this is probably not a bad deal. But if you're going to do anything more, I'm going to suggest that you take a good look at the Ryobi or something in the next tier up, because it's going to give you better durability. You got the 3-year warranty, and you have better dust control. So I hope this helps you out. If it has, please press like. If you're not already a subscriber, I'd love to have you as a subscriber. And as always, good luck on your projects.